These are not normally live, and I apologize, but for round 5 of the 2025 season in Saudi Arabia, it's going to be a quick fire live stream for the predictions because it feels weird. I'm trying to get the predictions edited. I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be out by the time we get to free practice 1, and it feels weird to put the predictions video out after we've already had a free practice session. So this is what it is. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for watching a little bit after the fact if you're joining me after it. But I'm just going to go through the scripts that I had already recorded one more time, this time live. So we'll see how this goes. It's going to be a really interesting Grand Prix, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix this time around, especially because Pirelli have changed up what they are doing for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix this time around. Obviously, the talk will all be around Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, maybe even George Russell in and amongst that championship battle, because we are getting towards a quarter of the way through the season, which seems insane to say considering it was only 6 weeks ago that we just got over testing and we didn't know what was going to happen in 2025. And it looks like everything is just slowly coming together for the season to be a real melting pot of ridiculousness. And the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is definitely going to add to that. It's sneakily become one of those races that I really look forward to over the course of the Formula One calendar. I mean, I think the penultimate race of the season in 2021 when Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton had that battle was an absolute madness of a day and definitely plays a factor in how good I think this Grand Prix can be. And even since then, we've seen some really fun races. Esteban Ocon, for some reason, is an absolute monster around this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix track, so definitely keep an eye out for him. But even since that 2021 madness, we've seen some very fun Grand Prix weekends, and this one shouldn't disappoint either. Okay, last year wasn't absolutely amazing, but they have tried to rectify that. I feel like the last race that we had here, you know, they needed to adapt it a little bit. And the fact that this is the last race, the first triple header of the season, is going to play a huge factor, especially if you're a rookie, right? It's the first time you've been in Formula One. We've got 5 rookies on the grid. They haven't gone through a triple header like this. Like the high speed corners, the tight layout of the walls, alongside the fact that you're a driver who is exhausted because you've just gone through your first triple header. Like the fatigue factor is definitely going to play a role here, and it will be creeping into those drivers' thought processes, especially as we get in towards the race itself. And we're almost certain to see a crash, aren't we? It's Saudi Arabia. The walls are very tight. Of course, there's going to be a crash along the way somewhere. It just feels like it's destined to be. And I feel like that's most likely to come during qualifying, because if we look at the track evolution that we have in Saudi Arabia, it's often quite dramatic. As with many street circuits, it's not used for anything else really. But alongside that, we don't really see much racing here in Saudi Arabia over the rest of the year. So it takes a good portion of the weekend just for the track to be cleaned up. And then by the time that the drivers are on low fuel and possibly cold tires, because we also tend to see quite a lot of traffic when it comes to this Saudi Arabian Grand Prix track, that final few corners is very, very tight, and therefore getting yourself some space to the driver in front of you and not being in dirty air for your qualifying lap is pretty tricky. Therefore, you lose a little bit of temperature in your tires and the track is still a little bit dusty. It just feels like it's destined that during qualifying at some point, we're going to see somebody go out as late as possible, try and get their lap in and make a mistake somewhere. So if qualifying does end with a red flag and a couple of drivers miss out because of that, that kind of plays into it. You want to be out early because you don't want to get caught in that red flag madness, but also you want to be out as late as possible because of the track evolution. So qualifying should be a really interesting qualifying session this year, especially because the main change to be aware of is that Pirelli have taken the tyres a step softer compared to last year. So it's the C3, C4 and C5 being available to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Like, that trio of tyres we don't often see together, and we haven't seen together before here in Jeddah. And the reason for this, as I said before, the majority of drivers last year were able to make a really comfortable one-stop strategy, especially because there was a safety car fairly early on. So everybody swapped their tyres under the safety car, and because the track isn't the most abrasive of tracks, there was no flexibility in strategy, and everybody just went for that one stop. And everybody who didn't go for the one stop basically failed because of that and fell backwards. Now, because we're likely to see safety cars, that is just a factor that always plays into it. And the fact that we're likely to see that flexibility in strategy, a two-stop race here with safety cars in and amongst it could cause that chaos factor that we're hoping to see. And also the fact that we've got that degradation on the tyres now should hopefully promote a little bit of overtaking. That's the hope, right? Like we saw last week in Bahrain, the teams and the drivers will have to create and adapt more different strategies as the race progresses and go for various different strategy choices, meaning we do have a more exciting and unpredictable racing. Because if China and Japan have taught us anything about the cars so far this season, it's that without any jeopardy in terms of strategy, this year's cars just really struggle to overtake, even in Suzuka, which is a track where you can overtake. So let's hope that the 50 laps of this Grand Prix, we see some overtaking, even though it's got 27 corners, which is the most corners of any track on the circuit. It is one of the fastest tracks on the entire grid. Around 80% of the lap is full throttle. The saving grace is the 3 DRS zones with heavy braking into turn 1, turn 22, and turn 27's hairpin. So I'm expecting a little bit of tyre offset, some different strategies in the Grand Prix, and hopefully that DRS being used to go into some really deep late braking overtakes into those really tight corners at the end of those DRS zones. So that's the hope, and that's what they're going for at Pirelli for this weekend. But you never know in Formula One. Could end up being like the Japanese Grand Prix and we just see 20 cars parade around for a little while. I really hope not. And I really hope that the safety cars and strategy will play a little bit more of a play into this weekend. Then we can sort of see the predictions, right? We don't want this to be a demolition derby, but the drivers with that fatigue, with the new tyres, it becomes very unpredictable. Like, I think we'll see it play out live. We'll be live once again for qualifying and for the race alongside both of those sessions. But it's going to be an interesting one to see how that plays out. And your predictions, pretty much everyone is all over the place. Nobody's got 100% guarantee of what they think is going to happen. And going through these predictions is by far and away one of my favorite things to go over the course of the weekend, because there's always some interesting talking points in there. When it comes to the best teams, we're starting to see a pattern now. Everybody has decided that the McLaren team is the best team. You know, coming into Australia, there was a little mix of Ferrari in there. Some people thought Red Bull might bounce back. Everyone's decided now that McLaren are most certainly the best team at the moment. I think that will change, though. You know, you look at the upgrades that came last year. Red Bull started really strong, then McLaren jumped into it, then Ferrari came into the mix with that Monza floor upgrade. I don't think this is over yet, and I think Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull have all got the platform there to be able to take the fight to the McLaren team. Like George Russell even said it himself. If you'd have told them before the season started that they'd have been within half a second of the McLaren team, they'd have probably taken it. And they know that there's upgrades to come. There's flexible wing changes coming in Spain, of course. There's a lot still to play out in this season. So just because McLaren are right at the top of this right now does not mean they're guaranteed to be there throughout the rest of the year. And then the same could kind of be said for your flop team. Stake Sauber. It feels like a weird year for them. And I think the fact that Stake and Aston Martin are starting to come towards the top of this just proves that fact that they are definitely thinking about next year more than this year. I feel like those two teams in particular are the two that are most certainly looking at next year more than any of the other teams. Stake, of course, becoming Audi next year, and Aston Martin. This is the first season that they've had Adrian Newey in the team, a lot of the other upgrades in terms of their staffing that they've made in recent years, and of course the upgrades to their facilities. So I can see those two just going gung-ho for next year. Fernando Alonso was talking about Max Verstappen possibly making the move to Aston Martin. That's something we definitely will delve into on the channel at a later date, because I think that is something that I've been talking about and something that I've been thinking about in the background. I've got a few ideas for videos on that. And then with the flop teams, you always get one of the big boys in there, two of the big boys in there this weekend. People really not thinking that Red Bull are going to bounce back in the way that Max Verstappen and the team are hopeful for. Then, of course, you got Ferrari. It's been a real mixed year for them, hasn't it? And it feels like Lewis Hamilton had a little bit of a honeymoon period with them. Then he won that sprint race, and it was like, oh, mate, maybe this will all move in the right direction for Lewis Hamilton. Then it's slowly dropped off a cliff once again for Ferrari, hasn't it? So they slot into the flop team. When it comes to the surprise, I like the fact you've gone for Ollie Behrman. I also voted for Ollie Behrman. I get my vote in and amongst this, but does it count for much when there's thousands of people that vote on these throughout every single weekend? Maybe not, but Ollie Behrman nonetheless got to the top of the surprise factor. I think just the fact that he's the rookie that has driven here before. Okay, it was in a Ferrari last year, but he came in very last minute for Carlos Sainz and delivered a very strong weekend inside of that Ferrari car. Now he's in a Haas. He's got a little bit of momentum behind him. A brilliant race in Bahrain last time out. I feel like Ollie Behrman is on for a very, very solid weekend. Yuki Tsunoda and Kimi Antonelli always seem to find themselves in and amongst this surprise bracket. I think everybody is just really hyped on Kimi Antonelli, and why not? He's had a very, very good start to the season. Then when it comes to Yuki Tsunoda, this could go either way, right? I think Yuki Tsunoda, the first time he was in that Red Bull in Japan, it was very split 50-50 as to whether people thought he was going to be good or bad. It's now starting to lean towards, oh, okay, he's doing well enough, but when is that step up, right? When is that going to be his first big point scoring opportunity, or the time that he gets maybe close to a podium or even nabs a podium? Because he needs to do that at least once, I would say, before the summer break to really think, oh, okay, yep, he's definitely moving in the right direction with this. Otherwise, if Max Verstappen does leave, goodness gracious me, what do they do? Does Yuki Tsunoda become the number one in a car that right now he's still struggling to get into the points with? It is a very, very big can of worms that they would be opening up at that Red Bull team. In terms of the struggle, though, Yuki Tsunoda has managed to disappear off of this struggle list. Liam Lawson still finds himself on it. And Carlos Sainz, Lance Stroll, has managed to jump up to the top of this. I thought it was a little bit harsh that he was towards the middle last weekend. Jumped up to the top of it now. Again, I think maybe it's because the Aston Martin car isn't looking absolutely amazing. But the fact that 16.7% of people think Lance Stroll is going to have the worst weekend in Saudi Arabia, I suppose he did have a pretty big crash here last time. Oh, and the time before. Yeah, now I can understand it. Now I can understand it. I've kind of thought back to the actual Saudi Arabian Grand Prix rather than the Grand Prix that we've had this season. And yeah, actually, Lance Stroll does usually find a barrier or two when he's in Saudi Arabia, doesn't he? So it makes sense that he's kind of jumped to the top of the struggle voting. Liam Lawson, there's just no faith in him. I think the fact that he just didn't work out, only 2 races in Red Bull, now 2 races in RB, where he's been pretty comfortably outdone by Isaac Hadjar in both. I think his confidence is absolutely shot. He needs something to go a little bit different for the future, I think, Liam Lawson. Max Verstappen slotting into here is insane. You know, the talk was, oh, is Max Verstappen back in the title race after Japan? Now he's in the mix of drivers that you think is going to struggle the most in Saudi Arabia, as well as Lewis Hamilton. Again, that kind of honeymoon period seems to have fully ended now, and people are pointing out the fact that Lewis Hamilton isn't doing enough, in your opinion, and isn't actually performing to the level that we expected inside of that Ferrari car, and will continue to struggle inside of it because, well, Max Verstappen does make it amongst the votes for the winners, but Lewis Hamilton most certainly doesn't. This is the one though, right? This is the interesting factor. Will it be Oscar Piastri to win the race? For the second time in a row, he is top of the race winner percentages. 34.3% of people think that Oscar Piastri will win this race. Only 29.7% think it will be Lando Norris. Those two have been the top two throughout the entire season, but for the first three races, it was Lando Norris. It switched last time around in Bahrain. You guys predicted that Oscar Piastri would win last time out. Have you predicted once again that he will be the winner here in Jeddah? He is usually very, very quick here. You look at the last two Grand Prix, and side by side, Oscar Piastri has had the better of Lando Norris in both of them in terms of race pace. And that was before Oscar Piastri kind of stepped up as he has done this season. I discussed that in the video that I'll link in the description, and has done really well this week, by the way. Thank you very much for watching that video if you have seen it. I really do appreciate it. But he just seems to have stepped up, doesn't he, Oscar Piastri? And now people have switched their voting. People think that Oscar Piastri is going to be that number one in the McLaren car for the rest of the season and the guy to beat when it comes to the championship. Because if this comes true, Oscar Piastri will take the lead of the Drivers' Championship for the first time this season and will demote Lando Norris from the top spot where he's been since Australia. The other two drivers in the mix for the title, Max Verstappen, he's said that he's out of it. Christian Horner has said that maybe he's in it. There's a little bit of a fractious disconnect there at Red Bull, as there ever is. Max Verstappen, is he still in the title race? I think so. I think he does need some kind of upgrade or change in form for this. Well, I say change in form. He's been very, very good behind the wheel of that Red Bull. It's an upgrade. It's a change in the dynamic. It's something to go a little bit different for him to really step up and be that championship contender. George Russell's doing everything that he possibly can, it feels like, inside of that Mercedes car. Like, if Mercedes do a McLaren and come to maybe Imola or Monaco, which are around 7 and 8 of the season, they bring a big upgrade. Like, you got to remember, Mercedes brought a big upgrade in Monaco, and that kind of put their season in a better route last time around. If they do that again and they bring another upgrade to Monaco and suddenly the Mercedes car is in the mix with the McLarens, George Russell looks right there in terms of his pace and performances so far this year. So maybe he can close that gap just enough to be a proper championship contender. But they are your guys' predictions. Do you agree with them? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what your guys' predictions are compared to these ones. Obviously, I don't get to see everybody's individual predictions, so it'd be interesting to see which one of your predictions matches these and which ones you're not so sure about, even though the rest of the community thinks this is the way that the weekend is going to play out. I'd love you to get involved, leave a like, subscribe on the channel as well. As I said, we'll be live throughout the entire Grand Prix weekend. This background might look a little bit different because, well, that's why I haven't been able to get this video out this weekend. Looking to the right of me is just a malaise of boxes and things that are suddenly going to disappear over the next few hours and go into a car. So hopefully brand new background to come in the next few weeks or so, but we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you for watching. Subscribe